Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be giving you 10 reasons why you should be investing in the REITs, Real Estate Investment Trust. So if this topic interests you, continue watching on. The first reason is pretty obvious because REITs is backed by real properties. Unlike a service or even a product producer, REITs is actually backed by an asset. So when you actually invest in the REITs, it's very unlikely that the asset will become zero. Take for example, you invest into a food business. That business can one day become zero in value if, for example, it loses all its customers and it doesn't have any assets. But for REITs, you never have that problem. Then the second thing about REITs, the second reason why you should invest in REITs is that REITs, when you invest in it, there's no ABSD, there's no additional buyer stamp duty. Unlike buying a second or third property where you'll be subjected to 12% taxes, investing in REITs gives you multiple properties and yet you do not need to pay the hefty tax back to the government. So that's the second reason why you should invest in the REITs. The third reason why you should be investing in REIT is that when you invest in REIT, you get a diversified approach to investing as compared to investing individually in a residential property. Now, when you invest in a REIT like Capital Mall Trust, you get more than 20 shopping malls and you become a part owner of it. But when you invest into an individual property, residential property, you are very concentrated in your investment approach. What that means is that whenever a tenant leaves, there'll always be a gap in terms of a passive income. I've rented out my HDB property and I realized that it's hard to get tenants to be back to back. So there'll be certain months when your passive income dries up before your next tenant comes in. But when you invest in a REIT, you actually get your dividends every 3 or 6 months depending on the REIT that you choose. I'd like to touch on the fourth point of why you should invest in a REIT is that when you invest in REIT, a lot of your tenants in the REIT itself can be locked up for many years. Take for example industrial REITs like Ascendas REITs. These tenants that are locked inside are locked in for 5 years and beyond. As compared to investing in residential property, your tenant is usually locked in for a 2-year contract. Now this is substantial because when you lock in for tenants for a long period, you get a real defensiveness in your dividends that will be coming in because you've locked in your tenants. When economic downturns, when you're investing in residential property, you're worried that you'll lose that tenant and lose your passive income. So having locked in tenants for a long period is the fourth key benefit of why you should be investing in the REIT. The fifth reason is that REITs are properly managed. There's actually a REIT manager that looks to enhance the property for you as an investor. When you're investing in properties yourself, as a property owner, you have to put in costs to upgrade the kitchen. You have to put in costs to maintain the facilities for your tenant. But for investing in REITs, you have actually a professional manager that does this for you. And the sixth point is that a REIT is regulated, which means that they actually have to fulfill certain guidelines that MAS sets on them. And one guideline that I've mentioned in a previous video, which I'll leave a links on top or below, is that a REIT actually has a maximum borrowing limit of 45%. It cannot be too geared, too over leveraged, and that protects you as an investor. In addition, the regulations of stock exchange means that there's a lot more transparency. If you compare REIT investing with a private collective property investment scheme, that does not have any regulation, and that if something goes wrong in that side, you are definitely going to bear the brunt of any losses. So invest in a REIT whereby it's a lot more regulated. So far, I've been moving on pretty quickly. Do you have any questions on REIT investments before I go to the 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th point? If you have, I would like to hear from you and leave them in the comment sections below. So without further ado, I'll go on to my 7th point, which is when you invest into a Singapore REIT, you're actually growing with the Singapore economy. If you invest into Suntec REIT, for example, that has a lot of office exposure, and that when Singapore economy grows, naturally office rentals will grow up over time. And for example, if you invest into Capital Mall Trust, again, you're investing into the retail malls of Singapore, and if Singapore becomes more affluent, you'll see better rental yields being collected from all the F&B outlets and all the retail outlets that are inside in the shopping mall. And the 8th point that I'd like to highlight to you on why you should invest in REIT is that REITs are actually a very tax efficient instrument. What that means is it has to pay only taxes on the amounts that they keep as profits, and everything that's distributed to you is tax-free. In fact, you don't even need to pay personal taxes to it when you collect dividends. On the other hand, when you invest into residential property as an investor, your rental income actually adds on to your personal income tax, and if you're a high income earner, that amount can be substantial. So again, investing in REITs gives you a lot of tax efficiency as compared to an individual investor into a residential property. The last 2 points are the most juicy parts, which is what is the dividend of a REIT. So without further ado, I'll explain to you the average yield that you can get when you invest into a Singapore REIT is about 6%. And that is pretty substantial because if you compare to Singapore savings bonds, which is about 2%, you actually get a good increment in your potential yield. And if you're a long-term investor, you should not be too afraid of volatility. Most of the REITs actually survived the financial crisis back in 2008. The 10th and final point is that REIT investing can be really passive, and one powerful method is to invest into a REIT ETF. If you invest in the REIT, you may be subjected to that industry's long-term prospects. For example, if I invested into industrial properties, and industrial properties see an oversupply, your REIT may perform quite poorly. But you can actually invest in the REIT ETF and break up this risk further. In a REIT ETF, such as the Lion Global S-REIT ETF, you get exposure into office REITs, you get exposure into hospitality REITs, you get exposure into industrial REITs. So that gives you a lot of passivity in terms of how you want to approach your way of investing. So I've covered the 10 key points as to why you should invest into S-REIT. I'd like to hear from you what is your preferred option or what resonated with you the most. If you have, leave them in comment sections below. I'd like to hear from you. So again, if you haven't subscribed, I'd like to invite you also to click on the subscribe button below because I'll be launching videos every week on financial topics and I want you to get notified of them whenever I release them. So click on that subscribe button. I'll see you in a future video. Take care and goodbye.